Anger often gets a bad reputation, seen as reckless, shameful, or unspiritual. But the truth is, anger is not your enemy. In its purest form, it is a messenger, a mirror, a fire that refuses to let you stay in what no longer aligns with truth. This is not a call to rage or retaliate. This is an invitation to reflect on what your anger is saying and how it might be the very thing God is using to bring clarity, courage, and change. In Scripture, we find stories where righteous anger sparked justice, birthed boldness, and revealed divine intention. These reflections are not permission to explode, but to explore, to uncover the hidden wisdom in your fire, and to let it shape you rather than shame you. Anger shows you where your soul draws the line. Before you even find the words to say, "I can't keep doing this," your anger has already whispered it in your spirit. It's the internal shift that happens when your soul starts standing up for itself. Moses didn't speak eloquently, but when he saw injustice done to his people, his anger stirred a lifelong mission. Let your anger show you where dignity begins. Let it push you to honor your truth. The anger you bury becomes the bitterness you carry. Unspoken pain doesn't simply fade, it ferments. And in time, it seeps into your relationships, your choices, your joy. Saul buried his insecurities until envy and rage consumed him. The anger you silence today becomes the resentment you spill tomorrow. Don't carry what you can confront. Release it before it ruins the things you still love. If you're never angry, you've stopped feeling what's wrong. A soul that cannot grieve injustice has been numbed, not matured. Even Jesus wept and burned with righteous anger when the temple became a market. When children are hurt, when truth is twisted, when the weak are crushed, if you feel nothing, you're not at peace, you're asleep. Let anger wake you. Anger isn't weakness, it's clarity. It's the moment your vision sharpens and you finally name what's been hurting you. When Nehemiah saw how his people were being exploited, he didn't explode. He acted. He rebuilt. He restored. Let your anger lead you to clarity, then to courage. Holy anger isn't loud. It's laser-focused. It doesn't need volume to create impact. It moves with direction. Jesus didn't rant in the temple. He flipped tables. With quiet fire and focused force, he disrupted what dishonored God. Your fire doesn't need noise to be powerful. Use it to dismantle what no longer aligns with truth. Suppressed anger doesn't make you peaceful. It makes you passive-aggressive. When you pretend you're okay, but your soul keeps score, you only delay the explosion. Anger needs a voice. Without it, you start resenting the very people you claim to love. Speak the truth before it leaks sideways. Take your heart seriously. Some boundaries are born in fire. Not all growth begins gently. Sometimes it's the burning moment of never again that becomes the new line you live by. The prodigal son came to his senses in the middle of hunger and humiliation. Anger is often the catalyst that says, "I'm done living like this." Let it move you toward change. Anger is what shows up when your values are being violated. It's not just a mood swing, it's a moral compass. You feel angry because something you care about is being trampled. Like when David heard Goliath defy the armies of the living God. His anger didn't just burn, it built a battle plan. Don't ignore what your anger is pointing at. The presence of anger means something still matters to you. You don't rage about things you've truly let go of. Anger means your heart is still in the room. It means you still care, even if it hurts. Use that awareness to guide you toward action, healing, or necessary closure. If anger leads you to a mirror instead of a megaphone, it can heal your life. Anger isn't always about them. Sometimes it reveals where you stayed too long, spoke too little, or abandoned your voice. Let anger show you what needs to be healed, not just what needs to be confronted. Then take one small, honest step toward restoration. Anger can clarify what fear tried to confuse. Fear says, stay small, stay safe, but anger says, this cannot continue. When Queen Esther realized her silence could cost lives, she risked everything to speak. Anger stripped the fear away. Use anger to get honest about what fear has blurred. Let it sharpen your steps. Your anger may be the voice of your younger self finally speaking up. What you swallowed as a child can surface years later. That's not immaturity. That's finally giving voice to pain that never had language. Let anger help you tell the truth you weren't allowed to speak before. Anger doesn't just call things out, it calls you up. It doesn't only identify the problem, it dares you to become part of the solution. It turns apathy into movement. Like the prophets of old, who wept and shouted not to condemn, but to awaken. Let your fire move you to take responsibility, not just rage from the sidelines. You can't grow past what you won't confront. Growth demands that you tell the truth about what hurts. Anger shines a spotlight on the pain you've tried to minimize. Let it lead you to a place of confrontation, not to create drama, but to open the door to something better. Most breakthroughs begin with some form of anger. I can't do this anymore is often the holy ground where transformation begins. That moment when your tolerance breaks and your truth breaks free. Let your breaking point become your turning point. Let anger push you toward freedom. When used with wisdom, anger becomes spiritual backbone. It's not loud, but it won't bow. Like the king who told the Israelites to keep building the wall and not to answer Sanballat and Tobiah, righteous anger isn't reactive, it's focused. Let it strengthen your resolve. Let it keep your hand steady on the work God gave you. You're not too emotional, you're finally honest. That fire in your chest? It's not drama, it's the soul refusing to fake it any longer. You were never meant to be silent in the face of disrespect. Let your emotions guide you back to truth. Let honesty be your healing. The people who fear anger the most are often the ones who were never allowed to express it. Raised in environments where anger meant rejection or danger, they grew up to believe silence was survival. But you're allowed to feel. You're allowed to name what hurt. Let anger teach you how to be human without fear. You don't need to apologize for being angry. You need to understand why. Behind every intense emotion is a deeper story. Instead of feeling ashamed for the heat, listen to its message. What truth needs to be named? What pain needs to be seen? Let anger invite you into honest healing. Anger is the pressure that lets you know something inside is trying to rise. It's not a weakness to feel it. It's a warning that something within is being suppressed. Let it rise to the surface, not in rage, but in revelation. Let it show you where your voice needs to emerge. The right kind of anger doesn't burn bridges, it burns illusions. It clears the fog of false peace, exposes silent compromises, and shows you where you've been pretending just to keep others comfortable. Let it burn what never belonged, so you can rebuild what's real. If your anger made you walk away, maybe the problem was the place, not the fire. Sometimes the space you left was never meant to hold your whole self, and anger helped you see that. Let it guide you out of confinement and into alignment with your values. The moment you said, "I'm done," was probably one of the holiest things you've ever done. not because you gave up, but because you finally chose yourself. Let anger be the voice that gave your soul permission to stop bleeding for people who refuse to stop cutting. You were never meant to smile through your mistreatment. Your silence is not your strength. It's your soul's distress signal. Let anger be the force that stands up, draws the line, and declares, "Not anymore." God doesn't fear your anger. He meets you in it. Some of the most honest moments in Scripture were drenched in frustration. Prophets cried out, Job questioned, David raged. And God didn't reject them, He responded, "Don't hide your fire. Bring it to the altar. Let it be your most honest prayer." Anger becomes dangerous when it's denied, not when it's felt. The most destructive form of anger isn't the kind that explodes, it's the kind that festers. Denial turns fire inward, burning through relationships, boundaries, and self-worth. Cain didn't talk about his frustration. He acted on it in silence, and that silence turned fatal. Don't pretend you're fine when you're not. Let the truth come to light, and let anger open the door to honest healing. Anger isn't a flaw to manage. It's a signal to explore. When it rises, it's trying to get your attention. Maybe something you value is being threatened. Maybe a pattern you've tolerated too long is finally wearing thin. Jesus didn't turn away from his fire in the temple. He let it move him into action. Don't stuff your signal, study it. Let it lead you into greater self-respect. When you learn to sit with your anger, it stops hijacking your life. You don't have to explode, and you don't have to implode. You can breathe, pause, and ask your anger what it's really trying to say. Most of the time, it's protecting a boundary or defending a need. Let anger teach you to listen more deeply, not react more quickly. Some of the most sacred turning points in life begin with a sharp, "I've had enough." That moment is not your undoing, it's your awakening. It's the hinge on which a whole new chapter can turn. Think of Mordecai confronting Esther. He didn't whisper, he pressed the urgency. And that push changed history. Let your breaking point become your breakthrough. Let anger wake your courage. Anger, when rooted in truth, is the doorway to new strength. The king who refused to engage with the mockery of Sanballat and Tobiah didn't ignore the insult. He redirected his people's energy. Righteous anger doesn't waste time explaining itself. It builds. It protects. Let your anger refine your focus. Let it teach you what deserves your effort and what doesn't. Righteous anger draws boundaries without needing to explain them. You don't need to justify why you're not tolerating disrespect anymore. Some lines don't need discussion. They need defending. Like Jesus drawing the line in the sand, protecting the woman caught in adultery, anger can say enough without shouting. Let your boundaries speak clearly even if your voice is calm. Anger doesn't break you. It shows you what broke you. That heat you feel isn't random. It's tracing the crack in your foundation. Maybe it was the way someone ignored your worth. Maybe it was years of pleasing people who never saw you. Let anger name the fracture. Then begin the work of restoration with bold, sacred honesty. Unacknowledged anger becomes self-sabotage, dressed as self-control. You might think you're being strong by staying calm, but calm isn't always healthy. If the peace you're holding is costing your joy, your dignity, or your voice, it isn't peace, it's pressure. Let the truth out. Let anger show you where you're sacrificing your wholeness for someone else's comfort. Anger teaches you what silence never could. For years, you may have kept quiet to keep the peace, but the cost of that silence was clarity. It was boundaries. it was self-respect. Like the prophets who cried aloud because the truth was too heavy to hold inside, sometimes anger is the only language truth understands. Let it speak, then act. Anger is not the end of grace, it's sometimes the beginning of it. Grace doesn't mean passivity, it means moving with truth and compassion. Jesus flipping tables wasn't a contradiction of grace, it was grace protecting what was holy. Don't mistake gentleness for weakness, and don't confuse rage with power. Let your anger be filled with grace, but let it be bold. The anger you feel now may be the wisdom your future self will thank you for. The very moment you chose to walk away, speak up, or say no more was when you chose your own growth. What feels like fire today may become your foundation tomorrow. Don't run from it. Let it shape you. Some of the most important decisions you will ever make will be made in the heat of clarity. There are moments when anger pulls back the curtain. You see what you couldn't see before, what you were enduring, what you were giving away, who you were becoming. And then you decide. Let that fire mark a shift. Take the step forward it's asking for. Anger can be holy when it honors your humanity. To feel is not to fail. To be outraged by betrayal, injustice, or dishonor is not sin. It's a sign that your soul is still alive. Let anger bring you back to your senses. Let it return you to yourself. Anger will cost you peace only when you ignore what it came to fix. You can pretend all is well, but anger knows what still stings. It is not the enemy of peace. It is the announcement that peace has already been disturbed. Listen to what it points to. Then take one step toward restoring what was lost. What you think is anger might actually be grief. Sometimes we call it rage when it's actually heartbreak. Loss hides behind fury. Abandonment wears the mask of irritation. Don't dismiss the emotion. Uncover it. Let your fire lead you to the ache underneath. Let grief have a name. There's a difference between reacting in anger and responding from anger. Reaction is impulsive. Response is intentional. When Nehemiah heard the cries of the oppressed, his anger didn't rush to vengeance. It formed a plan. Learn to slow the flame down just enough to direct it with wisdom. Let your fire become your leadership. Anger reminds you that you're no longer willing to play small. You may not have known what was wrong before. You may have settled, shrunk, or stayed silent. But now the heat inside says, you're ready to grow. Don't fear the bigness of your truth. Step into it. The fire that disrupts can also refine. When Jesus cleared the temple, he disrupted corruption to restore holiness. The same is true in us. Anger shakes what's false, but it also clears the way for what's sacred. Let it refine your motives. Let it purify your focus. Your anger isn't an obstacle to your faith. It may be the evidence of it. It shows you still believe something better is possible, that justice matters, that dignity isn't optional, that silence is not always spiritual. Let that faith-filled fire move you from passive belief to active truth. When anger and truth walk together, transformation follows. You don't need to choose between being real and being righteous. The prophets held both. So can you. Speak with honesty, move with grace, and let truth carry the flame. If they told you anger is dangerous, ask who it made uncomfortable. Sometimes anger exposes the dynamics others want to keep hidden. That's why it's silenced. But silence keeps cycles going. Let your anger disrupt them. Let it call injustice by name. Anger invites you to stop abandoning yourself. Every time you ignore your needs, your truth, your limits, something in you recoils. Anger is the inner voice saying, "Come back, come home." Choose you. Let it reconnect you to what matters. There is no healing without honesty, and honesty is often ignited by anger. It says, I can't do this anymore. I can't pretend. I can't accept less. That is not drama. That is the beginning of truth. Let it heal you. Anger, when surrendered to wisdom, becomes boldness. It's no longer about control. It's about clarity. You know who you are. You know what you stand for. And you no longer need approval to take action. Let your fire be focused. Let it carry conviction. You were never meant to hold peace at the expense of your purpose. Anger arises when purpose is pressed down, when calling is choked by compromise. That ache inside isn't rebellion. It's your purpose trying to breathe again. Let it rise. Let it speak. Let it lead you. Anger isn't the enemy of forgiveness. It often paves the road to it. You can't forgive what you've never felt. Anger brings clarity to the offense. It exposes the wound, defines the betrayal, and demands truth be faced before grace can take its place. Joseph didn't numb himself when his brothers reappeared. He wept, he tested, he wrestled with everything they put him through. And only after letting his pain rise did he extend forgiveness that was real, not forced. Let anger till the soil so forgiveness can grow without pretense. What feels like anger may actually be your heart saying, I matter too. There's a quiet suffering in always putting others first. You show up, you pour out, you stay silent, until one day the silence turns to heat. That anger isn't rebellion, it's revelation. It's the deep cry of your own spirit reminding you that your needs are not a nuisance. Let it lead you back to balance, where your heart has a place at the table too. Anger, when channeled wisely, is how we fight for the right things without becoming the wrong person. There is a kind of anger that builds, not breaks, like Nehemiah, who didn't scream at the injustice done to his people, but created a plan to stop it. He didn't let anger distort his mission. He let it deepen his conviction. Let your fire give shape to your calling. Respond, don't react. Stand firm without stepping out of character. You can be both gentle and on fire. Anger doesn't always come with shouting. It can simmer in the soul. Esther's strength wasn't in force, but in fierce intention. Her fire led her to confront injustice with wisdom, not with warfare. That's what righteous anger looks like. It doesn't explode, it executes. Don't let your gentleness be mistaken for apathy. Let your fire lead with grace, but never let it go out. There are prayers that sound like sobbing and fire. Sometimes your most honest moment with God isn't composed, it's desperate. Hannah's prayer in the temple looked like drunkenness to outsiders, but to God it was sacred. She poured out her bitterness, her grief, her fire, and that became the birthplace of Samuel. Bring your full self to God. Your emotion doesn't scare him. Sometimes the people who say you're too much are just used to you being silent. You being honest disrupts the dynamic they've grown comfortable with. They loved you quiet, agreeable, accommodating. But now you're rising. Let your fire burn off the roles you were never meant to play. Let the discomfort of others be a sign that your truth is finally standing tall. Not everyone will understand your anger, but they were never meant to carry your calling. The fire in you wasn't distributed for group approval. It was designed for personal purpose. Prophets were often misunderstood, even mocked, but they didn't shrink. If your anger isolates you, don't see it as rejection. See it as refinement. Keep walking in what burns rightly within you. Anger is often the moment you realize you're finally seeing clearly. For years, You may have minimized the disrespect, rationalized the control, or told yourself to be patient. Then one day, anger rises, and it feels like your eyes have opened for the first time. That's not you becoming bitter. That's you becoming brave. Don't look away from what's now clear. The moment you stand up for yourself, you may be accused of changing. Good. Change was overdue. The fire that brought you here is proof you've outgrown your silence. You don't owe anyone the version of you that tolerated what you've now healed from. Let them talk. You've got places to grow. Anger is not the sign of a broken Christian. It may be the start of a bold one. Holiness isn't passivity. Jesus' boldness in the temple wasn't a contradiction. It was a reflection of divine justice. If you're feeling fire rise when truth is compromised or people are mistreated, you're not backsliding. You're being shaped into someone who doesn't just worship God, but walks in His fire. When anger and grief dance together, transformation begins. Some wounds are so deep, they echo in both rage and sorrow. The weeping prophet Jeremiah wasn't unstable, he was holy and human at the same time. Let both emotions run their course. Don't hide from the blend. That's where your healing begins. Anger can make you a better listener to your own soul. Every time you feel that heat rise, ask what part of you is speaking. Maybe it's exhaustion. Maybe it's a boundary you didn't know you needed. Maybe it's a part of your story crying out to be seen. Don't shush your soul. Lean in. Anger, when left in the shadows, turns into sabotage. Suppressed fire becomes silent sabotage of your joy, your focus, your relationships. It seeps into sarcasm, sudden coldness, or disappearing altogether. Let the light in. Bring the truth to the surface before it destroys what it was trying to defend. Sometimes anger is the final push God uses to get you out of what's been killing you slowly. You prayed for a way out. Then came the frustration, the irritability, the fire. That wasn't failure. That was your rescue plan. God often delivers us not through open doors, but through rising tension. Let the heat move you. The words "I can't do this anymore" are sometimes the beginning of your most honest life. That phrase isn't weak, it's wildly courageous. It breaks the cycle. It rewrites the script. It dares to imagine something healthier. Let your exhaustion be the start of a new commitment to truth. Righteous anger breaks generational patterns. It's the fire that says, "This ends with me." Maybe you grew up in silence, fear, or people-pleasing, but now your fire is forging a new path for you and those after you. Don't dismiss the pressure. It's legacy-level work. You are allowed to be angry and still walk in grace. Anger and grace are not enemies. They are companions when led by truth. Grace doesn't demand that you swallow your voice or stay silent in the name of peace. When Jesus wept over Jerusalem and confronted the Pharisees, he did so with fierce compassion, not avoidance. Grace doesn't hush righteous anger. It gives it purpose. It teaches you how to move through fire with love, how to speak with both conviction and tenderness. You can draw a line and still leave room for mercy. Let your fire burn with the guidance of grace, not the absence of it. Anger is how your spirit says, "I refuse to abandon myself any longer." Every time you made yourself smaller to make others comfortable, your soul kept the score. That peace you fought to keep by being agreeable or quiet came at the cost of your identity. Anger rises not to punish, but to reclaim. Like the woman who touched the hem of Jesus' garment, desperate and unashamed, sometimes your push forward is born out of holy frustration. Fire doesn't only destroy, it also purifies. All throughout Scripture, fire was used to mark holy moments, not just judgment, but consecration. The burning bush marked a call. The refiner's fire prepared precious metal. The tongues of fire came at Pentecost to ignite the church. If you're burning, it doesn't mean you're being ruined. It may mean you're being refined. Let your anger burn away pretense, false peace, and old chains, so that what remains is pure, strong, and true. What made you angry was real, and denying it won't heal it. Pain buried in religious language or self-blame only festers. God never asked you to lie about what hurt. Even David raged and cried out, not with polished praise, but raw truth. If something wounded you, dishonored you, or broke trust, your anger is evidence, not of weakness, but of awareness. Let it be the start of your healing, not something you're guilted into hiding. The anger you feel may be God-given, but how you use it is your choice. Not all anger is sin. Some of it is sparked by the Spirit when something violates God's heart for justice. Like Jesus in the temple or the prophets crying out for the oppressed, there are times when anger is holy, but when mismanaged, it can harm what it was meant to protect. Take it to God first. Let Him temper it into strength, not scatter it into destruction. You can be godly and still not tolerate garbage. Righteousness is not weakness. Jesus never co-signed mistreatment. He confronted it. From calling out hypocrisy to walking away from places where He was dishonored, He showed us that love does not mean endless tolerance. Your anger might be the divine nudge to finally say, "This isn't holy, and I won't be part of it anymore." Let your faith be strong enough to call a lie a lie. Anger is often the call to return to yourself. Sometimes the first sign that you've been drifting is that inner fire, the one that flares up when someone crosses a line you didn't know you had. Anger helps you wake up. It calls you home. Don't be afraid to answer it. You're not backsliding. You're remembering who you were before you were conditioned to forget. What anger reveals, grace can redeem. Anger opens the wound, but grace brings the balm. One tears the curtain so the truth can be seen. The other sews it up with sacred thread. God doesn't need you to choose between truth and healing. He works through both. Let your anger do its work of unveiling. Then invite grace to step in and rewrite the story. You don't need to suppress your anger. You need to sanctify it. Not all fire is wild. Some is forged in holy places. Anger, when surrendered to God, becomes refined. It gains vision, compassion, and strength. Like Moses, who struck the rock in frustration and missed the promise, unchecked anger can cost you. But like Nehemiah, who rebuilt the walls of a broken city with focus and passion, sanctified anger can become a mission. Bring it to the altar. Let it become fuel, not fallout. Anger is the courage to confront what you were taught to accept. Sometimes what you called normal was just what you got used to surviving. Anger breaks that agreement. Like when Moses saw the Egyptian beating a Hebrew and his soul couldn't bear the injustice any longer. His fire didn't wait for approval. It acted. Anger rises when your soul refuses to keep playing along with dysfunction. Let it lead you to question, to challenge, and to change. There is nothing righteous about staying silent in the face of injustice. Anger that rises in the presence of evil is not a weakness. It's a reflection of God's own nature. Jesus didn't politely whisper when he saw exploitation in the temple. He overturned tables. Prophets didn't shrug at oppression. They cried aloud in the streets. Silence might keep you safe, but anger may be what keeps others safe. Let it move you to speak. Anger is the bridge between pain and action. Pain left unacknowledged turns into numbness, but anger builds a bridge from feeling to doing. When Nehemiah heard that his people were being exploited, he didn't break down. He he stood up. He formed a plan, rallied the people, and rebuilt what had been broken. Let your anger be the force that turns grief into growth. Anger teaches you what your limits look like. You may not know where your boundaries are until someone crosses them. When Saul kept pressing Jonathan to side with him against David, Jonathan's anger rose, not just out of loyalty, but out of clarity. He saw the line and called it out. Let anger draw your line in truth, then honor it. Some doors don't open until anger knocks. There are truths you don't speak, choices you don't make, and freedom you don't claim, until anger finally pushes you past the point of pretending. Like the woman with the issue of blood who fought through the crowd in desperation, sometimes fire is the only force that leads to healing. Let anger open what fear kept shut. Anger reveals what you were born to confront. The injustice that ignites your spirit may be your divine assignment. David didn't run from Goliath, he ran toward him, fueled by a fire that said, "This cannot stand." That kind of anger isn't reckless, it's righteous. Don't dismiss your fire. Ask what it's preparing you to stand up against. When you don't honor your anger, you end up honoring everyone else's comfort. You weren't made to walk on eggshells to keep the peace. Even Jesus stopped the show when he saw faith being choked by formality. He called out hypocrisy, not to stir hate, but to stir hearts. Let your anger disrupt what has long been tiptoed around. Not all anger is about the moment. It's often about the memory. When Joseph saw his brothers years after they betrayed him, his emotions erupted, not because of who they were now, but because of who he had been then. Anger doesn't always speak to the present. It sometimes cries for the past. Let those echoes become opportunities for healing, not shame. Anger is how dignity defends itself. You weren't made to absorb disrespect and call it peace. Jesus didn't answer every insult, but he never allowed his mission to be diminished by mockery. At times he withdrew, other times he confronted. Either way, he never bowed to dishonor. Let your anger guard what God called sacred. You are not too angry. You've just been too silent for too long. For too many, silence has become the disguise for pain. Like Jeremiah, who tried to stay quiet but said, "His word was in my heart like a burning fire," sometimes the truth must come out. Your intensity isn't your problem, it's your breakthrough. Let it speak. Anger is the roar behind the whisper of your no. Behind every quiet boundary is a deep fire that says, "Enough." Abigail used wisdom and fire when she confronted David to protect her household, and her intervention changed the course of a king's wrath. Let your no carry the full weight of what your soul cannot endure again. When anger flows through love, it becomes protection. When Jesus called out Peter for standing in the way of his mission, it wasn't cruelty. It was clarity born out of love. True love confronts what could destroy. Let your anger shield what matters. Let it protect, not punish. Anger reminds you that you were not created to be passive. Gideon's anger at the oppression of his people made him question, and God used that fire to call him into leadership. Don't downplay your discomfort. Let it call you higher. Some of the most powerful healing begins the moment anger is allowed to speak. Job didn't hide his pain. He brought it raw before God. He questioned, he cried, he got frustrated. Anger may be the start of your most honest healing. Let it speak. Let it lead you into truth. Anger helps you name what your body already knows. Before your mouth speaks it, your body holds it. Elijah felt the fatigue of his journey long before he said, "I've had enough." That was fire speaking through exhaustion. Don't ignore what's showing up in your breath, your sleep, your stress. Let anger help you name it and deal with it. You're not being disobedient. You're being delivered. Sometimes your discomfort is divine. When Israel cried out under Pharaoh's oppression, it was the groaning that triggered their deliverance. Don't feel guilty for the fire pushing you to move. You're not abandoning your faith. You're walking out of what's been binding you. Anger is the heat that shapes bold decisions. Every great act of courage is often born in discomfort. Esther's boldness began with a fire that said, "If I perish, I perish." That was not passivity, that was power. Let your fire shape the decision your destiny depends on. The fire in you is not a flaw. It's fuel. You don't need to tone it down. You need to turn it in the right direction. Paul's zeal once fueled persecution, but after encountering Christ, that same fire advanced the gospel. Don't kill the flame, just surrender it. Anger can be the holy interruption that saves your future. Sometimes disruption is divine. Jesus' interruption of the temple system wasn't out of impulse, it was out of divine correction. Your anger may be revealing what God never meant for you to carry forward. Let it interrupt what's been comfortable but unhealthy. If anger has shown up, something needs to be seen. When Cain grew angry, God asked, "Why are you angry?" Not to shame him, but to invite him to reflection. He missed that moment, but you don't have to. Don't bury it. Ask it questions. Let it reveal what's beneath. The anger you carry may be inherited, but the healing is your responsibility. Maybe you watched it shape your parents, your culture, your childhood, but that doesn't mean it has to shape your future. Like Josiah, who tore down idols his ancestors tolerated, let your fire rewrite the legacy. Start the healing. Anger isn't the opposite of peace. It's often what paves the way to get there. Jesus told storms to be still, but only after confronting them. Peace is not pretending. It's what comes after the cleansing. Let anger tear down what fake peace covered up. The strength to forgive often begins in the fire of anger. Before Joseph could embrace his brothers, he wept bitterly. Forgiveness without anger is often forced, but when the fire is felt and faced, the grace that follows is real. Let your fire speak before your forgiveness settles. When anger is surrendered, it becomes power. Samson's anger became destructive because he never surrendered it. But Jesus' anger brought restoration because it was holy. You get to choose what your fire becomes. Let God shape it. Then use it with purpose. The fire in you is not an accident. It's an assignment. You weren't called to smile through corruption or sing through silence. Jeremiah said God's word was like a fire in his bones. He couldn't keep it in. That same fire may be burning in you, not to break you, but to build what only fire could make room for. If you've ever felt guilty for being angry, take heart. God doesn't silence fire. He shapes it. Anger can be a tool, a compass, a refining flame in the hands of wisdom and grace. What you do with it matters. Will you ignore it, bury it, or will you ask what it's trying to teach you? Let anger drive you to healing, to clarity, to courage, to boundaries, to truth. You are not too much. You are waking up. Let the fire speak. I'm your host, Abigail. Have the courage to feel, the wisdom to examine, and the faith to let even your fire lead you closer to truth.